Hello and welcome. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I will begin. Someone asked me about pins and needles and numbness, which is a very commonly asked question, of course, from meditators sitting for a long time in one position who suffer from numbness or pins and needles, which is just a result of cutting off the circulation. And we can avoid that. As you know, monks and nuns and meditators, experienced meditators, can sit for 3 or 4 hours in meditation with no need to move or get up, except then, other than perhaps to go to the toilet. That's usually only perhaps because they're guzzling gallons of water continuously, which I understand is apparently the thing to do, but if you want to meditate for a long time, it isn't. So yeah, pins and needles can be a problem, but it is the result of cutting off the circulation. So when we sit, please watch the video. I've already talked about this, how to sit for a long time in meditation, or how to sit properly, or something like that. But how to sit properly? Well, just by that I mean, don't cut off the circulation, and then you won't have numbness or pins and needles. And the way you do this is get rid of all of the cushions, all of the mats. Your beautiful handmade Himalayan buckwheat filled zafu is not essential to meditation, nor is your foam mat or a comfortable sand dune even. What is far more preferable is a hard concrete floor, or even better than that, a flat wooden floor, which is a little bit of a better feel about it. However, that around here is prone to termites, which once they go through the wood, start going through you. So this is ideal. I've got a lovely floor here. Now it doesn't look so comfortable, but it is if you sit correctly. Now, of course, at first we can't all sit in the full lotus or the half lotus, or even what precedes that we refer to as the Burmese posture, I should say, which really is just putting this right leg rather than this foot up on the left thigh, which is the half lotus, and you'll see both knees are on the floor. Here, it takes quite a long time, well, a little bit of time, for your pelvis to adapt to sitting in this posture. But even before it has, even if your knees are up here, sticking up a little bit, it's okay, because all that's in touch with the surface and having any pressure applied to it is your bottom, which in itself is a zafu. Your bottom is a cushion. It is there for that purpose. So you don't need anything else. If you have anything else, it creates folds and impressions and pressure points into the flesh, thus cutting off the circulation. So if I was to sit on a podgy mat or a cushion now, I no doubt would get pins and needles and numbness also, but I don't. I have a grass mat and then a sitting cloth, a thin cloth, and that's about as much comfort as I get, and that's also for me for sleeping too, but that's okay. You don't have to go that far. But when you're sitting on your carpet or on the floor at home, then have just we call it cross-legged, but we're not really sitting cross-legged, because if you sit cross-legged in the fashion of a school child, you literally do cross your legs, and at the point where they cross, you're cutting off the circulation, which will create the numbness and the pins and needles. But if you sit in this so-called Burmese posture, then all that's touching the ground is the underside of your thighs and your bottom. Now, after a long time, maybe your bottom might get a little bit numb if you've got a skinny bottom. But if you've got a more substantial rear, then you're going to be well equipped for a long sit without any discomfort, numbness, or pins and needles. So it's as simple as that. Get rid of all of these aids. Throw them away. Give them away, better still, to somebody who might want them. But just sit on the floor A carpet's great. A carpeted sitting room floor or bedroom floor is superb. You don't need anything else. It may be uncomfortable at first, but you won't get pins and needles or numbness, and you won't harm yourself. That's the important thing. You must be calm, kind to your body. So don't push it too far. If your knees are up like this, it's okay. They'll slowly, with time, go down. If you keep your back straight and your chin just tucked in slightly a little bit, and I always say your ears in line with your shoulders in line with your elbows in line with your hips, and your hands just resting on your lap, your right hand on top of your left palm, and your thumbs just touching. This is upright. The lower part will just settle, as do those Himalayan buckwheat beads in your zafu. If you just drop it on the floor, they just slowly settle into a position, as will your lower half. Having dispensed with the cushion, your weight will all just rest on your bottom. And nothing, as you can see, you probably can't quite see very well, but my legs here are not crossed or even touching. All that's really touching is the underside of my thighs and my knees very lightly on the firm surface of the floor. As soon as you introduce cushioning, matting, aids, then you create little waves and little impressions in the skin to cut off the circulation. So dispense with it all and just use what nature has given you to meditate. Your body, it's so well designed for the purpose. It can adapt to all sorts of conditions. Eventually, when you put this right foot on your left thigh, your right knee will be firmly placed on the floor, and then you are sitting with a tripod function of knees and bottom spreading the weight, so it's not even all on your bottom. And although it appears you're cross-legged, your actual foot is supported by your upper thigh. Now your bottom and your thighs are very protective around any vessels, so any cutting off of the circulation is really not possible, even with a tourniquet in those areas, because the arteries, the veins are so deep within the flesh. Whereas when you start crossing your legs, sitting on zafus and on special little wooden stools in other ways, lower down, you're going to cut things off. So mindfulness of the body is very important. Before you start your meditation session, make sure it's already comfortable, then you don't have to move later. It may not seem that you can sit for a long time at first, but if you address the issues you've come to realize through practice at the start of each session, now that you know what occurs later on, if you don't, then you have that opportunity to ensure yourself an uninterrupted long session of enjoyable meditation with no pins and needles and no numbness. Mindfulness of the body, knowing your body, knowing how it is responding to the surfaces it's in contact with, and what doesn't need to be introduced to make that more complicated. It's all about simplicity, this practice, as I've said so many times before. Nothing's needed. We just need to be conscious and aware of all that's going on. And this is bringing me on to the first comment here, really, about speaking more on the subject of sati sampajana. Someone was asking this in relation to sampajana during the day and the effects of lust in the mind. Well, the effects of lust in the mind is the same as any other emotion arising in the mind, and all emotions have their corresponding bodily feelings. So we establish the four foundations of mindfulness. This is part of the practice. And when you read the suttas, you come to understand very quickly that mindfulness is every bit as important as meditation. It is in the Noble Eightfold Path, samasati, right mindfulness, just before samasamadhi, right meditation, but they're not relegated to number 7 and 8 of the Noble Eightfold Path, because that is a circular. We have to establish right view, but we can establish right view through the rest of the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. So right view, right intention, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation are all parts of a holistic practice. So mindfulness is very important. Sati Sampajana just means mindfulness of everything, all that we're doing, being careful throughout all of our activities. So even when we're going to sit and do nothing for 2 hours and meditate, before we embark on such a feat, if it is, then we establish that our body, through mindfulness and being careful, is very nice and comfortably placed. Not by adding things to it that will move, adjust and create difficulty, but by keeping everything as simple as possible. The other thing I should add with that, just back to the first comment there, is loose clothing and underwear. No tight clothing, or for instance, I mean, jeans are an absolute no-no for even loose fitting jeans, because they're thick material. Loose cotton material, your bathrobe or whatever you wear to go to sleep at night is much better than tight or thick material clothing, because it all creates these, you get up sometimes and you maybe look at your an impression that material presses and makes on your skin. The seams of a pair of jeans, for instance, may leave that pattern in your flesh. This is what you're trying to avoid. That's what's cutting off the circulation. So loose fitting clothing, track suits or whatever you call them these days, and we wear these robes. That's it. Nothing underneath, and this is as loose as you can get, and very flexible and practical for that purpose. So Sati Sampajana and lust. Well, lust is an emotion with its corresponding bodily feelings, as all emotions have their corresponding bodily feelings, and bodily feelings such as either pain or pleasure have their corresponding emotions. So the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which we're establishing in order to have Sati Sampajana, mindfulness in everything, are based on that. They are mindfulness of the body, being aware, consciously aware, bringing your conscious awareness, if it's necessary, intentionally to the feelings in your body. So when you're walking, how your foot is lifting, moving, placing, and the feeling of the contact of the foot, the sole of the foot, with the surface of the ground. Lifting, moving, placing, and that same corresponding feeling. And how are you feeling about that? That's the second foundation of mindfulness. If the ground is sharp, stones and painful to walk on, and you have a long walk ahead of you, a feeling of disliking may arise. Pindapata in the morning and you're walking on sharp stones. I've got another mile or 2 to walk now. Oh no, how am I even going to survive another day? This is a feeling of not liking, not wanting. Feeling, mindfulness of feelings, or Vedana. So we have Kaya and Vedana, the first 2 foundations of mindfulness. And then Chitta, which is the mind. Now that is just the conscious awareness, knowing in this context of the bodily feelings and the bodily experience, I should say, and the emotional or mental feelings. So it isn't consciousness Vedana as in Chitta. Vedana isn't, or Chitta. Vedana is feelings. Chitta is the mind that knows feelings and knows the body. So Chitta knows Vedana. Chitta knows Kaya. It knows Kaya Viveka, so seclusion for the body, physical seclusion in a cave, or sensory deprivation chamber, something like that. It knows seclusion of the Chitta too, when you can bring your own seclusion from external environmental influences to internal observation of just the effect of those influences on arising mental emotions and corresponding physical feelings. You are taking refuge within that knowing, and this is Chitta, or mind. So we have the first 1, 2, 3, 4 foundations of mindfulness, of the body, of feelings, of the mind, and finally of Dharma, or phenomena, all phenomena that's arising. So anything that's arising, for in your case lust, know it as it is just lust that is arising. And then you can attribute to all phenomena that arises the 3 characteristics of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta. That is that they're impermanent. So however much you dislike a feeling or you like a feeling that's arising, know that it will pass away. It is impermanent. And therefore, in that respect, if it's something you don't like, yes, it will be resulting in a feeling of dukkha, suffering. But if it's something you like, after it's over, when it finishes, it will result in dukkha, suffering. So either way, things you like arise, things you don't like arise. They both result in suffering ultimately. And anatta, not self, all this phenomena, these phenomena that occur, whether mentally, emotional or physically felt, are out of our control. They're not what makes us up. They are not us. What is only there, independent of that and us, is that citta, that awareness of kaya, the body, of vedana, the feelings, and of dharma, the phenomena that occurs. So this is the four foundations of mindfulness, summed up very quickly, and how we practice or understand sati sampajana in relation to those things that might arise of liking, desire, or aversion, not liking, and included within that either to different degrees, lust associated with the desire or hatred associated with aversion. We have, to summarize those, lobha, dosa, moha, greed, hatred and delusion, the three kilesas, the three Pali words for the kilesas, greed, hatred and delusion. So all lust is arising from desire, is arising from greed, wanting something, whereas hatred is the opposite of that, not wanting, all with the same results. So desire, being the cause of suffering, is for something you want that you don't have, just as much as it's for something that you really don't want and you have. Whoa. Today I would like to know about the last days of Buddha. How did Buddha die? There are more than one interpretation for this. Did the Buddha really complete his teachings and he was waiting for this before he died, before his parinibbana, we say in the Pali language? So you should read the Maha Parinibbana. Parinibbana is the final passing into Nibbana, no more rebirth. And the Maha Parinibbana Sutta is the sutta attributed to the dying of the Buddha, the physical body and his thinking brain. And that is the only and definitive version. You say there are different accounts of this event. The only reliable version of event, in my view, is from the Pali Canon and in that sutta. It's a relatively long sutta, but I'm not going to go into it now, because as you probably know by now, I don't do that on these talks. I refer you to look at it and read these suttas for yourself and draw from them what's useful. And rather than getting into long, drawn out conversations about the semantics and the use and translations of a particular Pali word as opposed to a different translation and all of this, the overall general subject matter in hand is that, yes, in answer to your question, the Buddha wanted to establish a Sangha, a fourfold assembly that I talked of last time, where there were nuns, there were monks, there were nuns, so bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, there were laymen and lay women, upasakas and upasikas, there to continue with the Dharma, or practicing in the Dharma that the Buddha had taught, and in respect of the Sangha, in accordance with the Vinaya Pitaka, the first of three baskets, the Vinaya Pitaka being the rules and guidelines for the way of life for monks and nuns. Then the Sutta Pitaka, the teachings, Sutta Pitaka, the teachings. And the third came much later on, the Abhidharma, a more in-depth commentary and analysis on the suttas and the teachings of the Buddha and the workings of the mind. Yes, to some extent, 40 years teaching and him waiting to establish that before finally knowing it was okay to finally let go, attaining to parinibbana, is indeed the case. But for the whole story, read the Maha Parinibbana Sutta, because it is a beautiful sutta, and it's very much something I'm always referring to with respect to the Vinaya, being that the legacy of the Buddha is such that we don't now worship the Tathagata, which means thus gone. Buddha, he's gone to parinibbana. He can't hear us. We don't pray, we don't worship. Well, maybe he can, but we don't have a relationship with our teacher in that respect, but with his teachings. We pay homage to the Buddha in memory of his achievement, as it is our own aspiration to attain to such high achievement. And we take heed of his teachings, and we practice in accordance with those, the Noble Eightfold Path. And abiding as monks and nuns to the Vinaya, we are exercising his legacy to us, and that is the way to live, which has not changed, and our path and direct route to Nibbana and also Parinibbana, as he attained to as well. So this is the legacy, this is what we pay homage to, this is the overall teachings of the Buddha, all summed up so very beautifully, as it is in many of the great suttas, in that sutta too. So if one is not aware of the rebirth, why does it matter? Or is the Buddhist plan to live happily and just not worry about anything? So the goal, the Buddhist plan, is yes, to live happily, and yes, not to worry about anything. After all, what does worrying about anything achieve? It doesn't achieve anything, does it? Just more suffering, compounding suffering. You may be able to establish a plan, an exit, a route to end a cause of suffering, but just to sit and worry about the suffering, this pain is worrying me, and worrying and worrying and worrying about a pain will not make it go away. You need to go to the doctor, get medication or treatment, and find the cure. So we don't worry, no, and we do intend to be happy. But the way we do this is through this practice. Our ultimate goal is to be free from suffering within this lifetime, which is indeed free from anxiety, free from worry, free from concern, really, about the future or the past, bringing our attention, our conscious awareness into the present moment. This is the skill we learn through the practice of meditation, the development of samadhi, to not worry about the future and have concerns about the past, but to really appreciate what's happening in the present moment and enjoying that, being happy, but free from rebirth into any form or any realm. So when you ask me if we're not aware of rebirth, why does it matter? Well, we are born now. This is rebirth. Now, in other theistic faiths, religions, we appear miraculously from nothing, without causes and without conditions. We just appear. Excuse me. I was thinking, maybe. Look, the dog stopped barking now as soon as I got up. I'll get down again. So when we sit down, nice and carefully. It's the monkeys or the peacocks. Not a salesman today. When the monkeys or the peacocks jump around in the trees. And the peacocks, very large birds, as you probably know, very beautiful. They jump around rather than fly. they jump up onto this roof. You would have known if it was that. It makes a bit of big noise. But that might have been a small monkey or something. Or it could have been a snake. These are the things that make the dog bark. The cat's hiding in that box. It was out there for someone to take to a bonfire at some point, but she's found it a place to hide today. Anyway, so you are born now. This is rebirth. We are aware of it. Now imagine if it was, it may be that you're suffering a lot. And this is why we need to be concerned about it. Why it matters? This is why it matters. Because if your situation, you don't have to think about waiting to die for any of these teachings to manifest, even the understanding of rebirth. Because in each and every moment, we are leading to rebirth in the next moment. So what you're doing currently is leading to your future, is establishing the basis of your future. So if you're behaving in accordance and practicing in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path, keeping moral virtue, practicing meditation, developing wholesome mind states and reducing unwholesome mind states, then that will lead on to your future reflecting a more calm and peaceful, comfortable and happy existence. But if you're spending your time breaking the precepts, killing and stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking intoxicants, if you're not meditating but you're perhaps reading or you're watching entertainment of a very unsavory and violent nature, or you're even practicing activities of such, in such ways, then you will not be developing wholesome mind states, but more unwholesome, negative mind states. And you will not be building up for your future, a happy life, a happy existence. It will be filled with regret, with remorse, maybe even guilt and shame. But in Buddhism, we don't refer to guilt and shame because we can establish that everything in the present moment is separate, is free, this moment, from what's gone on in the past. That has been and gone. We make the determination now, whatever we've done in the past or what has happened in the past, for that now not to be what we're doing in this present moment, which leads to a complete change in the next moment for our future, to be free from that suffering that we were experiencing as a result of causes and conditions that we had been putting in place over the previous moments prior to that. So we establish that right here and now. And you can see from that why rebirth matters. Because if it really didn't matter, if karma had no effect, so you could do whatever you like without consequence, then you might take and adopt a hedonistic lifestyle of taking lots of drugs. And after all, that's not necessarily harming anyone else directly. Watching lots of movies, going out to expensive restaurants, driving fast cars, living as much as you possibly can in the present moment, fast and furious kind of lifestyle. But how often do we see, major celebrities, pop stars, whatever, coming to a sudden and early death as a result of all those activities? Very often. Or those around them, as I'm sure they are, very much harmed as a result of that person's activities. Not necessarily right there and then, but at that person's death, at their loss. Think of all the people that grieve over that loss as a result of that well-known person dying, as a result of their own, unmindful, heedless actions of body, speech and mind that have caused them to die early, and then all their fans and what have you are distraught that they've lost them. This is why it matters. And if you don't believe, you don't understand, or you don't want to think about what happens after death, that is too okay. Because what you're practicing here and now in the present moment is for this next moment, for this lifetime. If it helps with what happens next, then that is a benefit, that is a bonus, isn't it, in the next life. If there is no next life, then it doesn't matter, does it? There is nothing to be gained by heedlessness within this lifetime, by violence, by not caring, by unhappiness. But there is so much to be gained within this lifetime and potentially the next by a life of moral virtue, of meditation and wisdom. Where is your finger and what happened? So I answered this question, no, it's nowhere. Where is my finger, you see? Well, it's nowhere. I know I've been asked this before, so I'm not going to tell you the story about how it just accidentally got cut off when I was chopping some wood in the forest with a machete, and it was raining, and I was cutting a piece of hazel stick, twigs off the stick, and accidentally sliced my finger off that I was holding the stick with. But regardless of that, the question was, where is your finger and what happened? Well, I answered, well, it's nowhere. Because where is it? Well, it's nowhere, is it? And they asked me then, what do you mean? Well, that's what I mean. If you cut off an arm, a leg, or a finger, or even just when you cut your fingernails off, or you cut your hair, where does it go? Immediately it goes on the floor. Or mine didn't come completely off, it was hanging there. I had it stitched back on a couple of times. It didn't work. Eventually I had it completely removed. And then it's incinerated. So fast-tracked back to the four elements of solidity, or earth, liquidity, water, so any steam, vapour that evaporates from the burning finger in the incinerator, any gases and air that was contained within it, and then the temperature, the heat, is lost as it's burnt away. To nothingness, just the four elements, returning to the constituent parts of everything. Also, in order for those constituent parts of earth, water, wind and fire to exist, there needs to be somewhere, a place for those to exist. And within them, for the molecules, the atoms, the content of those constituent parts to be as they are, in the state they are, there needs to be this fifth element of space. So both externally and within these elements is space. By very far, the most of everything is space. Even an atom is mostly space. Neutrons and electrons and protons or whatever, all separated by their electricity and magnetism. I'm a physicist now. But space, without space, everything all just falls into just a dust. But even dust has space. So my finger, it's nowhere. We all, as will our bodies, and this is why I'm talking about this commonly asked question again, because it's a reflection. I asked to keep my finger. For what particular reason, I can't quite recall. Just thought it might be useful to mount it at that time, to remind me to have mindfulness perhaps in the future. But I don't think that would have been useful, and wisely they said no, as you're not in the UK allowed to keep any of your body parts. Having had them removed, they have to be disposed of. I'm not sure what the law is behind it, but you're not allowed to take your arms and legs home. So yes, that's it. It would, like as do our bodies. We were talking about Maranasati or Maranasati, this contemplation of death, and this is very much part of the contemplation of death, that our bodies will return to their states of earth, water, wind and fire, or solidity, liquidity, gaseousness and temperature. This is what makes us up, and this helps us come to the understanding of not self. So am I still the same self, the same person with a little bit of finger missing as I was before? Well, you think so, I think so, I don't think there's much difference, but in effect I'm not, am I? And if you cut off all of my arms and legs, then I would not be Bhante with 2 legs and 2 arms, I'd be Bhante with no legs and no arms. But essentially what you've come to know me as, listening to these, remains the same. That is what I've been practicing. That's all that remains. Eventually, with the establishment of this practice and our directed efforts in this practice and firm intention, commitment and determination, all that will remain is the knowing, conscious awareness, that citta I was referring to earlier, free from those kilesas I also referred to earlier of greed, hatred and delusion, and therefore free from attachment to kaya, this body, physical body, and the feelings resulting, vedana, from having this physical body and this thinking brain, which still comes under nama and rupa. Kaya and nama are like the physical parts of our body. Our physical body and our thinking brain are part and one and the same, nama rupa, aside from citta, which knows that. Untethered, untied citta to that, you're untethered, untied to rebirth, into samsara, knowing fully that you're not a self. This body, this ego, whatever you call it, self, is not you. It is just the results of causes and conditions that are put in place. These khandhas, this body, this feelings it has, which are reflected and fully understood through this practice and understanding of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, bringing us full circle back to the beginning there, where we started talking. Once again, I didn't look at the time, did I? I've been thinking about this lately. If and when people have been very mean to me from time to time, even though I've never done or said anything bad to them, I just like to wish everyone the best. Are they just being mean because they want to be, or do I deserve this? Everything, for example, with my bad karma from my past and from this life, I don't understand what this is about for me. So there's a couple of things there. And the importance of reflection. We have chanting, and some people might think chanting is unnecessary and it's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Well, if it's in a language like Pali and you're not understanding the meaning of the Pali, then it can be mumbo jumbo and unnecessary rites and rituals. But if you actually listen to the words translated into your mother tongue, into your own language, the reflections are very important. And one of the important reflections that we chant in the evening chanting, and for Thai people every day they're chanting this, is that these characteristics of existence, impermanence, but also and impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and not self, but also that we are the results of our own karma, yes. So we do put into place the causes and conditions, the results of karma, the Pali word is vipaka, are, and the causes and conditions are pachaya. Those results and conditions are the cause of what's happening to us directly now, or indirectly from causes and conditions we put in place in the past. But we also go on in that reflection to chant that we are the heirs to our karma, and owners of our karma. So if somebody is mistreating you, it isn't necessarily because you have mistreated them. And it isn't necessarily as a result directly of your past bad karma, even in this life, but maybe as a result of karma or actions of body, speech and mind in a previous life, or at a time that you can't remember, that have led to you being in this position whereby you're meeting these people. But remember that as well as wishing them the best, you can have compassion for them because they are creating their own bad karma. They are the heirs to their karma and owners of their karma. So thereby, therefore, their mistreating of you is creation of bad karma for the future for them. You may have well treated people badly yourself in the past, or something entirely different, but this is your time to pay back. But you don't need to see it as black and white and fruitless as that, and I must take my punishment. There are always ways to just understand that this is a situation that is impermanent and will pass. It may be that you can move aside, step away, avoid a situation. There's nothing wrong with doing that. This in effect is disabling the ability for that person to create more bad karma. So you're doing them also a good turn, a favour. You're doing them, you're treating them compassionately, developing karuna, compassion, through your own natural quality of metta, loving kindness. So you don't understand what this is all about for you. What it's all about for you is life. Now, I don't mean that just flippantly. The Buddha teaches us that there is suffering, but he also teaches us there's an end of suffering. We have to know about suffering to see suffering before we can identify its cause. We're not going to go to the doctor until we're ill, but we are always faced with suffering. As we grow up, as we age, as we get sick, and when we die. We're facing suffering in this very lifetime, here and now in the present moment and throughout all its preceding moments. And we often are projecting it into the future, but that's where we stop. In the present moment, we change the causes and conditions for the creation of that suffering. And we come to understand through the development of wisdom what the cause of that suffering is. And the cause of that suffering is these kilesas, these three, greed or hatred, or delusion, not understanding, confusion. So it doesn't mean we have to go out and read a textbook and acquire a whole lot of intellectual knowledge, but understand that suffering just comes about through wanting. When we can learn not to want, but just take what we need, have what we need, satisfy the need rather than the desire. So if we're thirsty, we can quench a thirst by drinking water. We don't necessarily have to have Pepsi Cola or milkshake. That would be nice, as long as we know it's just nice, but that feeling will not last. If that's all we could drink, we would crave for plain water, which would satisfy our thirst. This understanding of the nature of desire and its cause of suffering is coming from experience, experiential knowledge, wisdom, learning. Panya, wisdom. That is what it's all about. So the suffering you're experiencing is a teacher in itself. It's a lesson for you to know that those people are also suffering. From your comment already, I can see you understand that, because you have compassion for them by wishing them all the best. Hopefully not just by saying that, but by actually meaning that. You feel for them, because by them mistreating you, they're creating bad karma for themselves and in the future, because we're all the inheritors of our own karma. Now, the best way to do that is dig out that chanting book and go to the evening chanting section and read through the English translation, or in your own language, the translation of those short reflections. The 5 contemplations for what's it titled? It's a long title. 5 daily reflections that include karma. They include the characteristics of existence and karma and not self. These things that we must keep reminding ourselves daily. And then when things arise, all of a sudden they pop up in our mind, those reflections. Oh, well, they're just being nasty to me. It's their problem. A lot more their problem than it is mine. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And if they're breaking your bones with sticks and stones, it's still hurting them, potentially more than it's actually just hurting a physical body, which is just experiencing a moment of discomfort and suffering. Another lesson, an understanding in dukkha, what we come to learn and understand about in the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma. So if it's a very short one, we'll go for it. If not, then I think you've been reading about Tonglen meditation. I've been given 2 opposing views. Do you have any advice, please? No, because I don't practice that. This, I think, is a method of breathing in all of the problems of the world, the suffering and the pain, and then making it pure and breathing it out again. So taking on about everybody else's suffering, which is rather not compassion, that the way I practice it. I understand other people's suffering, as I was just talking about, and appreciate that with compassion that other people may be suffering, as am I, or as we all are, individually, as a result of our own karma. But I don't truly believe that you can breathe in everyone else's suffering and breathe out freedom from that suffering. It is very much our practice in the Theravada Buddhist tradition to work on ourselves, being the meaning of the word in terms of this body and this thinking brain, to practice in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path, to relieve us from suffering within this lifetime, and by that practice set an example for others to follow to relieve themselves of suffering. We cannot expect others to relieve us from suffering. They can teach us how, however, give us the tools, give us the medicine to relieve ourselves from suffering, which is far more useful. Because if whenever you're suffering you've got to go elsewhere to get relief, it's of no use. That elsewhere may be gone, that teacher may be dead, that place may not exist, that thing might not be available anymore. Whereas if we continually have the tools within ourselves to relieve our suffering, then whatever we do, wherever we go, whatever may occur, we are there fully equipped to relieve ourselves of suffering. And this is the Dharma, this is what we're taught, this is how we practice. So I hope on that note there's something there that's useful you can use, and if not, then just let it go, and please share and subscribe, do whatever that people do, watching YouTube videos. I don't have social media, but if you do, share it all on that stuff. And let's make this a popular place for people to come and listen to the Dharma, even more so than it already is, I hope. So on that note, thank you for watching. Be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu. See, no numbness, no pins and needles, because nothing was crossed, you see. And hard floor.